The Yamato carried the largest guns ever put on a ship, 18.1-inch barrels that could spit out shells the size of a compact car. Each one was taller than a man and wider than a telephone pole. They could dig a crater 30 feet deep, basically a DIY swimming pool. So how many ships did this floating apocalypse sink? 1. A single destroyer. 4 years of war, thousands of sailors, billions in resources, all for a kill count that makes a stormtrooper look accurate. Here's the financial comedy. Yamato cost 137 million yen in 1940, enough for Japan to build 1,000 fighter planes. Instead, they built 2 of these floating flex pieces. That's 2,000 planes Japan didn't get. For context, that's like cancelling the Air Force to build 2 giant floating midlife crises. And how often did Yamato's superguns get used against real enemy ships? Once. They fired 360 shells at American escort carriers. Hits? A fat 0. Not even grazed the paint. The only things Yamato ever hit were smaller destroyers, and not with the main guns, but the secondary ones. Imagine bringing a bazooka to a knife fight and then missing so badly you end up slapping people instead. Oh, and the guns were so powerful, they were basically self-destruct buttons. Every time Yamato fired a full broadside, the shockwave fried its own electronics, knocked out its radios, destroyed its spotting aircraft, and gave sailors permanent hearing damage, even through steel walls. Congratulations, Japan, you built a ship that injured itself more than the enemy. On paper, Yamato's guns could reach 26 miles. Sounds terrifying, right? Too bad the Earth is round. Anything beyond 30,000 yards literally disappeared over the horizon. Congratulations, Yamato. You had god-tier range against Atlantis. Japanese optics could theoretically track up to 27,000 yards on a sunny day with no smoke, no rain, and if everyone squinted hard enough. In real combat, effective range was more like 18,000 yards, meaning half the gun's capability was basically target practice for the ocean and accuracy. At 20,000 yards, Yamato had a 0.2% chance to hit per shell. That's not 2%. That's 0.2. You needed to fire 500 shells just to statistically land one hit. Each barrel could fire 2 rounds a minute, so in perfect conditions you'd finally score that one hit after 45 minutes of non-stop shooting. That's less weapon of mass destruction and more expensive slot machine. An American destroyer captain who actually faced Yamato said the giant splashes were spectacular and terrifying. Translation: they were impressive fireworks, just consistently 300 yards off target. Yamato's gunners couldn't hit a ship moving at 25 knots, but they sure made the ocean look fabulous. Fuel consumption? Yamato was basically a floating Hummer. At cruising speed, it guzzled 300 tons of oil a day. At battle speed, 600 tons. That's not a ship, that's a global warming machine decades ahead of schedule. At full speed, she could go about 3,000 miles. By 1944, Japan barely had enough fuel to keep bicycles running, so Yamato mostly sat in port. The guns that were supposed to control the Pacific ended up controlling rust on the dock. Every time those main guns fired, it burned up enough steel to build a Zero fighter. 9 shells equals 1 plane. Imagine if Japan just melted Yamato's ammo down and tossed planes at the Americans. It probably would have been more effective. But the saddest math of all, Yamato was in commission for 1,200 days. Actual combat? 10 days. That's 0.8% of its service life. The rest was basically a very expensive game of hide-and-seek from American submarines. Or just sitting there, existing as a fleet in being, which is a fancy way of saying threat cosplay. Here's the real punchline. Air power turned Yamato into a floating piñata. At first she had 24 anti-aircraft guns, which is like defending a skyscraper with Nerf blasters. By 1945, Japan crammed 162 AA guns onto her. Still useless. On April 7th, 1945, 400 American planes swarmed in. Yamato ate 11 torpedoes and 6 bombs in 2 hours. The giant 18-inch guns even fired anti-air shells, 3,200-pound warheads exploding in the sky. Like trying to shoot mosquitoes with hand grenades, they might have shot down 3 planes. Maybe, for a kill ratio that makes a participation trophy look impressive. The crew knew the joke. One survivor recalled, "We called her Hotel Yamato. Excellent food, air conditioning, and we never fought." Basically, it was a luxury cruise where the entertainment was polishing guns nobody dared use, and when they finally did, the ship was already sinking. The final mission, Operation Tengo, was literally suicide. Yamato was sent to Okinawa with just enough fuel for a one-way trip. The plan? Beach herself and turn into a coastal battery. Translation: Congratulations, you're now a stationary turret that's going to die. Command knew she'd never make it. They sent her anyway. Over 3,000 men died for what amounted to a propaganda death march. Now compare that disaster with American battleships. USS Washington, with smaller 16-inch guns, sank the battleship Kirishima in 8 minutes. USS Massachusetts crippled the French battleship Jean Bart with the same caliber. Meanwhile, Yamato bombarded shore positions once, by accident, while trying to hit carriers. It was less naval dominance and more oops, wrong target. 2 Yamato-class battleships cost as much as 6 fleet carriers. 6 carriers could have launched 1,000 aircraft. Instead, Japan got 2 oversized floating lawn ornaments with guns that couldn't hit anything, couldn't leave port without running out of gas, and couldn't survive a sunny afternoon with American dive bombers. The ultimate irony? Yamato was sunk by aircraft from 11 carriers. Each of those carriers cost less than Yamato's main guns. Her shells cost $50,000 each, modern value. The torpedoes that killed her cost about $1,000 apiece. Yamato basically got deleted by weapons that were 50 times cheaper than her own ammo. So yes, Yamato's 18-inch guns were engineering marvels. They fired 360 times in anger and achieved absolutely nothing. The most powerful battleship ever built turned out to be a $137 million noisemaker, an expensive way to prove that brute force without brains is just loud splashing before you sink